Alright guys, so today I wanted to make a quick video about something that I've been thinking a little bit about recently, and that is what are the top 20 or so cigars that I would recommend for people looking to start their cigar collection, or maybe cigars that I wish I had tried out sooner in my cigar journey, or that I wish people had recommended to me earlier on. And so that's what we're going to be taking a look at today. So we're going to jump right into it. Two quick comments just before I start showing you guys some cigars. The first is this Humidor. I get a lot of comments in some of my videos about, what are some of the things that I'm showing you guys. Like I get comments about some of the Tupper doors that I use to store cigars in, and I also get comments on, what are some of the lighters. And so this Humidor is a Bald Eagle Humidor I got off Amazon. I'll have that linked in the description below. I made a separate video on that, which will also be down in the description, but this is a really nice, affordable desktop humidor. It's made out of solid Spanish cedar, not just a veneer. So just wanted to let you guys know if you're interested. That's the humidor that, you just saw. The second thing is I just wanted to go over some of the requirements I had for the cigars in this video. And there's not many, but I figured I should probably have a few. So one requirement is going to be that I've actually smoked this cigar before. I don't want to recommend a cigar that I haven't personally had an experience with. So I've smoked every cigar you guys are about to see in this video. The second requirement that I had is that these need to be readily available. These aren't going to be cigars that you guys are going to have a ton of difficulty finding. You might not be able to find all of them at every single store, but I would say for the most part these are pretty readily available cigars. And then the third requirement is just that these cigars have to be somewhat affordable. Some are going to be more expensive than others, but I'd say for the most part the prices of all these cigars range between, on the low end, like $5-6 maybe, and on the high end I think maybe like 15 or 16 bucks. I am going to be going over a lot of cigars today, but I just wanted to point out that not every cigar I mention I'm going to have to show you guys. I have, like I mentioned, actually smoked it, at some point in the past, but I don't have all of them with me here today. I still have quite a few, but I just want to let you guys know before we start getting into the cigar. So without further ado, the first three cigars I'd recommend is going to be from a very popular brand, and that's Oliva. So Oliva is well known for making some excellent cigars, and what I really like about their cigars, in addition to, the incredible flavors they have, is going to be their consistency. They are consistently rolled very well, their construction is on point, and they sell for a reasonable price. So the three cigars I have from Oliva are the Oliva V Milanio. This is a Robusto size. It comes in a bunch of different sizes, but this is a Sumatran wrapper. This cigar is well known in the community. It has received several awards, and it is honestly deserving of all of them. This cigar goes great with, a morning cup of coffee, or, really at any time. But it's super consistent, it's super good. Prices may vary, but you can find these pretty affordably online. The next cigar from Oliva is going to be this. This is the Serie V. So this is the precursor to the cigar I just showed you. This has a different wrapper. This is an Ecuadorian Habano wrapper on this. And it's a little bit different in its profile. It's a little spicier, maybe a tad bit earthier as well. But it's an incredible cigar. Also has received a ton of high ratings. Not that that necessarily matters, but it's something that I think a lot of people look at, and it's just something worth commenting on. So another fantastic cigar from Oliva. Again, pretty affordable. You can find it pretty much everywhere. And then the last cigar is going to be, or the last cigar I have on, from Oliva here is going to be this. This is the Serie G Maduro. This is the first Maduro cigar I think I ever smoked, and it was kind of a surprise. It wasn't what I was expecting from a Maduro cigar. It wasn't, it's dark, but it wasn't like punch you in the face dark. This has a lot of nice sweetness. It's balanced, and again, the construction is fantastic. And this one is box pressed. I think a lot of the Serie G Maduros are box pressed, but they maintain fantastic construction throughout the cigar, which is, if you've been smoking cigars long enough, you know that a box pressed cigar, they are prone to having burn issues, and I just didn't get that with this cigar, so it was a fantastic experience. This is the most affordable of these three cigars. The last Oliva cigar that I'm going to recommend that I don't have with me here is going to be the Oliva V Connecticut Reserve. I think for a milder cigar and for somebody that wants to try Connecticut, that would be a fantastic cigar. Again, you know, affordable, great construction. Maybe I'll make a separate video on it, but that could be one of the best cigars to hand to somebody who just is getting into cigars. That would be an excellent beginner cigar. So 3 or 4 cigars that I'm going to recommend from Oliva are going to be the Serie V Melanio, the Serie V, the Serie G Maduro, and the Connecticut Reserve. The next 4 cigars are going to be from a brand I think everyone's probably familiar with, and that's Arturo Fuente. Now, if you've seen my cigar collection videos, you know I'm a bit of a Fuente fanboy. I have a lot of their limited release stuff. I have boxes of some of their more regular production cigars because I think that they're fantastic. Like Oliva, I think they offer great value for money, and I think their construction's always on point. And again, their cigars are readily available. Maybe not every single one of them, but if you go into a cigar shop or, you know, a tobacco shop, chances are if they have a humidor, they will have something from Fuente. So I have 4 here. One of them's not technically from Fuente, but I'll get to it in a second. But I would say there's probably a few more that I would throw into the mix that I'll get to in a minute. So the first cigar from Fuente that I'm going to recommend is going to be the Arturo Fuente Sun-Grown. This is the Double Chateau Sun-Grown. This cigar has fantastic construction. It's got those spicy, earthy notes. It has great sweetness, and it gives you a good sense of what Sun-Grown wrapper has to offer. The other line that's very similar to this is just their natural wrapper, and that's another one of those cigars that I don't have here, but that I would highly recommend. It's a lighter, more medium-bodied, maybe mild cigar, but it's got a lot of creamy, like buttery type of notes in the cigar. So not very similar to this one, but a great cigar, especially starting out and getting into cigars. Next one up is going to be this Arturo Fuente Especiales. This is a surprisingly good cigar. This is one of their most budget-friendly lines, and I think, you know, this is a couple bucks a cigar. And for that price, this thing is hard to beat. It's not overly complex, but it has, you know, subtle sweetness. It's got a little woodsiness to it. When I think of like what a cigar should look and, you know, smell like and taste like, this thing checks all of those boxes. So this is it's called the Cazadores Natural. It's a Toro size, but another great one from Fuente. Next up, we have the Arturo Fuente Don Carlos. This is a cigar that has quite a reputation, and I think that it lives up to all the hype. This is a Cameroon wrapped cigar, so it's a little bit different of a profile than you might get with, you know, some of your other Fuente cigars, but this is absolutely fantastic. This is the number 4 size. I traditionally like these in a little bit of a larger size, like their Robusto or their Double Robusto. This one's good. It's just a little fuller bodied, a little punchier. But any of these Don Carlos cigars, you cannot go wrong with. They're a little bit more expensive, but I still think they offer tremendous value. You can see here, Don Carlos number 4. So the Cameroon wrapped cigars may not be for everybody, but they are a must try, and Don Carlos is one of the best. And then the last cigar we have right here is going to be this Julius Caesar from Diamond Crown. Now, this is a J.C. Newman cigar. However, they are rolled by Arturo Fuente, and I only have one J.C. Newman cigar up here, so I kind of wanted to rope it in with these other Fuentes up here. But this is a fantastic cigar. A little bit more expensive than the ones I just showed you, but I'd say for a special occasion cigar, at this price, this is a hard cigar to beat. You know, I think some people online, I don't think I've ever really seen anybody that dislikes this cigar. I think some people think it might be a little bit overrated, but me personally, I think it's possibly one of my favorite cigars, and it's a box that I'm going to be trying to buy in 2025. I believe it's an Ecuadorian Habano Oscuro wrapper, so it's a little bit darker, but it doesn't smoke like that, but it's very smooth, it's very chocolatey, and it's got a nice sweetness to it. And I think that this is just a really enjoyable cigar. So definitely recommend trying this one out. I don't think you'll be disappointed. So right before we get into these next 3 cigars, I want to say something that I forgot to say earlier when I started the video, but one of the other reasons why I wanted to make this video was because I think a lot of people, myself included, get a lot of bad advice when they're starting out. And I think a lot of the times people will say that you should try, or that you should buy like samplers, and that you should just kind of try anything just to see what your palate prefers, and all of that. And I see where the sentiment for for those statements comes from. But I honestly, the longer that I'm into cigars, the more I tend to disagree with that. And the reason being is that in a lot of these samplers and stuff that you find online, they do have good variety, but I don't think that they offer tremendous value, not all the time. And I don't think you're always getting a great cigar. And I think where that can be detrimental is that if you're smoking something that isn't a great representation of what that cigar should be, like let's say you get a Maduro cigar in a sampler that just has like no sweetness, it's all deep earthiness, and it's just like punching you in the face, that's not gonna be a great representation of a lot of the other Maduro cigars out there that do have that balance in sweetness and complexity, and it's going to turn you off from wanting to try other cigars like that. So part of what I'm trying to accomplish with this video is to give you very specific cigars to try that I think are a great representation of what that cigar should be, so that you know like what a cigar should taste like when it's done right. And then that way, if you start with something that's a very high quality and done well, then you'll know when you have something else that's done well, or you'll know when something's done poorly. And so I think a lot of people think that they need to start like super budget and kind of crappy when they're getting into it, and I don't think that you need to go for the highest priced or the most expensive limited thing out there when you're starting out. But I definitely don't think you should reach super low. I think you should go for something that is going to be a good representation of what a really good cigar is, and that way you can develop your palate the right way. So I just wanted to make that comment. I think a lot of people out there get this bad advice, and I just wanted to set the record straight. And that's just my opinion. I'm sure some people agree or disagree with me, but that's just my 2 cents. So next 3 cigars, these are going to be more boutique cigars. What I mean by that is that they're a little lower in production than some of the Fuentes and Olivas and some of the other cigars I'm about to pull out. So these cigars may be harder to find than some of the other cigars here, but they're still affordable and they're still fantastic cigars, and I think that they earned a place in this list. So starting off, this is a cigar, a brand that I think a lot of people are familiar with and they're becoming more familiar with, but they're still a little bit smaller than like your Fuentes and your Olivas of the world. But this is Tatuaje. It's made by a guy named Pete Johnson, and I think he does a great job with the branding of the cigar. I like the simplicity of the cigars, the bands and everything, but also these cigars are incredibly good. This is the Tatuaje Brown Label Miami. So it's made in Miami, or rolled in Miami. This is Nicaraguan tobacco, and this cigar is one of my favorite cigars of all time so far. It really reminds me of a Cuban Monte Cristo number 4. Now I'm not saying that this is like a Cuban, or that this is a substitute for a Monte Cristo number 4. I feel like there are some similarities there, and they share a lot of great quality. So this cigar is excellent. If you see this, I highly recommend giving it a try. It's medium bodied, it's super balanced, and it's super enjoyable. Next cigar is going to be this cigar from Stolen Throne Cigars, and this is the Yorktown Fleet. I would recommend this cigar, I would recommend their Three Kingdoms cigar, and I would recommend their original, which is the Crook of the Crown. This is just the only one that I have with me right now because I've smoked all the other ones, but these are incredible. These are probably the smallest production of anything I'm going to pull out, but these are definitely worth seeking out. I think because they're small production, I think they're still trying to establish themselves a little bit. These are still a great value, but I think they punch way above their price. These have incredible construction, great balance, great flavor, and this is just a brand that I wanted to bring more attention to because I think they knock it out of the park. So if you guys find anything from Stolen Throne, it's definitely worth putting in the Humidor. And it's something unique that I don't think you're going to see in everyone else's Humidor. And then so the last one right here, this is going to be the Aladino Corojo. They have a Reserva. This is just their standard line, so it's a little bit lighter. It's a little bit more medium bodied. But this is a Honduran Corojo Puro. And so this, I think, is a great intro into Honduran tobacco. I think a lot of you'll see other cigars labeled as Honduran cigars. I don't want to call them out, but I don't think they're a great representation of it. But I think this has a great natural sweetness, but it has a lot of nice elements of, I think it's called terroir, but it's essentially the earth that the tobacco is grown in. And I think this has it in spades, and it's just a really great cigar. I mentioned it with the Tatuaje, but take it with a grain of salt when you hear people say this, but I do think this is Cuban-esque in some ways. Cuban cigars, I think, tend to have a lot of earthiness, light earthiness associated with them, and I think I get light earthiness with this cigar as well. Obviously a different type of earthiness, but just in some of its qualities, I think that this reminds me personally of some of the Cuban cigars that I've smoked, which I think is kind of cool. Sometimes that's a taste you're going for, so this one, definitely worth giving a try. Also, not something I've really talked about on the channel before, but I do have a website, stogietribe.com. I link it in the description of every video, but it's a storefront where you can get things like this Stogie Tribe mug. There's also hats, t-shirts, hoodies, and it's not just Stogie Tribe. I have other cigar-related designs on there as well. So I really encourage you guys to check it out. I put a lot of work into it, and anything you purchase does help me out. So next up, this is kind of my miscellaneous category. Not that these cigars are like random selections by any mean, but I didn't have multiples of each brand to group together, so I grouped these three together. So first one is going to be the Flor de las Antillas by My Father. When this cigar was first released, it ended up getting Cigar Aficionado's #1 cigar of the year. Again, not that that means the world, but something interesting, and that is a pretty big accomplishment. This is a very value-minded cigar also, which is why it's pretty impressive that it won Cigar of the Year. And I think at the time it wasn't just, I think this was like a consensus, a very good cigar, and it still is a consensus very good cigar to this day. But for the value, it's great, and it has a lot of complexity and balance, and I'd say it's like medium, full-bodied. I didn't include any other My Father cigars in this list, but I think I absolutely could have. My Father, their core line, they have a very popular cigar called The Judge that just won the 2024 Cigar of the Year. But My Father makes some really great cigars. This personally, I think, would be the one that I would introduce to people first, though. So that's why I have it here. Next up is going to be the Joya de Nicaragua Antaño Connecticut. I think this is potentially one of the best intro Connecticut's out there. And this isn't like your traditional Connecticut cigar that is like very mild, borderline flavorless kind of Connecticut. This has a lot of subtleties to it, like subtle spice, subtle earth, that kind of elevate it from your standard Connecticut. And this is like one of the largest manufacturers down in Nicaragua. They make some really good cigars. This is probably my favorite from them, and also probably one of the better values that they have. And so last cigar right here should come as no surprise that it's in this list, but this is the Padron, specifically the 1926 Maduro. This is my personal favorite Padron. It's definitely a bit more on the expensive side. It's a very premium cigar, but I think it's well worth it. I tend to like the Padrones in the Maduro, specifically the 1926. I think that this is chocolatey. It has spiciness. Again, balanced. Probably, in my opinion, the fullest bodied cigar that I've shown so far, but very good. When you're buying a Padron, you're getting incredible construction and quality. And in addition to this cigar, I would also recommend their 1000 series lines. So it's not like their anniversary series, but they have a simplistic brown band on them. You'll probably see them at most cigar stores. So this, in addition to the 1964, in addition to those 1000 series cigars, I recommend all of those. This is kind of a placeholder for just really any Padron cigar, but if you want to try a really high quality Nicaraguan cigar, Padron is probably one of the best. All right, and last up, I have a handful of Ashton cigars. Ashton, La Aroma de Cuba, I kind of roped them together. I think La Aroma de Cuba is an Ashton brand, same with San Cristobal, but in particular, these 5 Ashton cigars I highly recommend. So the first is probably the most recognizable. This is the Ashton Classic, or sorry, not the Classic. This is, what is this called? This is just called the Ashton 898. It's like their most classic line, and it's a Connecticut shade cigar, very mild, so more mild than that Joy de Nicaragua I just showed you, but this is quintessential, just smooth, easy smoking Connecticut cigar. And again, like Padron, like a lot of these brands, Ashton is one of those brands where you know that if you buy it, you're gonna have a fantastic cigar. So I highly recommend this one. And in this size in particular, I think with some of these cigars, I wasn't recommending a particular size, but I would recommend this particular size. I think it's, you know, a staple in the Ashton lineup. Also, I think 898 is a Cuban size as well, but very nice size. I think this cigar, you know, it's a little bit more premium, but I don't think you can go wrong with it. Next up from Ashton, kind of a 180 from that cigar, but this is the Ashton VSG in Bellicoso. Obviously, you can probably assume by the color, which isn't, you know, you shouldn't always assume that a darker cigar is going to be a fuller bodied cigar, but in this case, it absolutely is. But this is the Ashton VSG, which stands for Virgin Sun Grown. This is a Sumatran wrapped cigar, and this cigar, I think, is one of the best value cigars in the Ashton portfolio. It's about the same price as that cigar. It's kind of on par with a lot of the Ashton cigars, but this is just so flavorful. It is a fuller bodied, I would say maybe medium to full, but you know, an awesome cigar nonetheless. Next up, another darker cigar from Ashton. This is kind of the Maduro version of the Connecticut that I showed you, but this is the Ashton Maduro. This is like a Robusto size. I think this, in addition, you know, obviously I think highly of all these cigars, but this is also a really great Maduro cigar to try when you're first starting out. It's a very smooth, balanced Maduro. I would say this is probably medium bodied, but it's got those nice, rich Maduro flavors, and it's nicely balanced. And I think that this is a good transition from somebody that's going from Connecticut and trying to smoke something just a tad bit darker. This is a great cigar to go to. All right, and then these two cigars right here, they are kind of similar in their profiles, but I'd say they are a little bit different. But these are the La Aroma de Cuba Reserva and Mi Amor. So this Reserva here is a broadleaf wrapper. So it is a full-bodied cigar, but I think, again, like all of these cigars, it has incredible construction, it has great balance, and it has great flavor. And it's a little bit more affordable than some of the Ashtons, but I think you get a lot of the great Ashton qualities out of this cigar. So I definitely recommend this. And then the La Aroma de Cuba Mi Amor, again, like a Maduro shade wrapper, but this is a Mexican San Andreas. Not quite as full-bodied as the Reserva, but this is a super flavorful cigar. This is in Bellicoso, which I think was the #2 cigar a couple years ago. So, you know, take that for what it's worth, but this is an incredible cigar. That's going to wrap up the video. If you guys enjoyed, I would appreciate you leaving a comment and giving the video a like and subscribing to the channel. And let me know down in the comments, what are some of your cigars that you would recommend to somebody just getting in? Or what are your some of favorite cigars? I would love to know and potentially add them to my humidor. So if you guys enjoyed, I appreciate you sticking around to the end, and I will see you in the next video.